You're listening to the BJJ Globetrotters Pirate Radio Podcast, brought to you from St. Bart in the French West Indies. We talk jiu-jitsu, traveling, and people who do things a bit different in life. I am your host, Christian Graugard. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the BJJ Globetrotters Pirate Radio Podcast. This episode is sponsored by My Mom's Garage. My Mom's Garage was the first warehouse of BJJ Globetrotters. I put like 3,000 books there, and it took me a few years to get them out, even though I convinced her they would only be there for a few months. So that was probably not exactly what she had in mind when she said yes to that. Eventually we moved to a bigger warehouse, and My Mom's Garage is now empty again. I hate podcast advertisement, by the way. I know I promised there would be another episode in a few weeks, but it took a little bit longer than that. Sometimes, just like in jiu-jitsu, life just hits you, and there are other things that take your time. And the podcast project is on the nice to have list for me. It's definitely not on the necessary for survival kind of list. So unfortunately I had to postpone it a little bit, but I am back in the basement and excited to get a few episodes out the door that I have ready. What's happened recently? The next 5 camps are now sold out, so that means the Castle camp in Italy, the US camp in US, the summer camp in Belgium just sold out, the Greenland camp, and the Iceland camp. So it's going to be an incredibly busy summer for us, but I'm very excited about that. So the only camps left with tickets are, at this point, the fall camp in Germany, and then the Sen camp in Poland for the summer. There's going to be a lot of people to roll with for sure. I had some time off the mats the last weeks, and can definitely feel that I need to get back in shape for the camps. Somehow the camps are what keeps me in shape. It used to be competition that pushed me to eat properly and work on my cardio and my like the weak parts of my body, so I didn't get injured. I can't really compete at the moment due to living on a rock in the Atlantic. So camps kind of took all that for me. It's what keeps me sharp, because I don't want to show up at a camp in bad shape and not being able to roll with as many people as possible. I think I owe that to the participants, and I like to do it. So a lot of things happened. We managed to launch the Globetrotters in Action service, which is if you listen to the last podcast you would know, but it's the kind of the Globetrotters video library, where we have collected at this point more than 100 videos from our past camps, and we will be sending a professional video guy to pretty much all the camps in the future to film the classes and put them online for free. So if you can't make it to the camps for whatever reason, or I don't know, you can't afford it or something like that, you can still kind of follow the classes and all that. 100% free. We do it for karma. At this point, before all the camps start this year, I'm spending a lot of time I'm kind of in a design phase. Spending a lot of time on doing banners and designing geese and rash guards and t-shirts, and I'm sitting here looking at my whiteboard on the wall of my basement, and I have done finished up almost half of the gi rash guard t-shirt banner designs for the camp. So still a while to go, but it's a process that I enjoy. So I always like to try and come up with new designs that are a little bit fun or a little bit different. Also working hard on something new for the camps is try to more organized do kind of off the mat classes or like theoretical workshops for the camps. This is something I wanted to do for a long time, but I just had my hands full with the amount of work we had at the camps. At this point, recently, since New Year, I had a full-time assistant, Vara, who's been working for me for many years in my old academy, and she's really taking a lot of work off my shoulders, so I can focus on fun things for myself, or like projects I've been wanting to do but I didn't have time for, like this podcast. But one of the things are the theoretical workshops at the camps. So I've been gathering ideas for what kind of workshops people want to do, what kind of workshops the instructors can do, what I could do myself. I'm not sure about that yet. And then we will vote for it in each camp participant group to see what workshops people want to do. And then I'll try and put it on the schedule, rent conference rooms for it, and then see how we can fit it in. I think it's going to be interesting to have just more of that, because first of all, it's good, valuable information, and it's also you don't have to be on the mats all the time. The camps could be really hard on your body, and you want to do more stuff or learn more stuff, and this is an opportunity to do that without necessarily being on the mats and doing something physical. So it'll be like injury prevention, strength and conditioning, mental preparation, rules workshops, first aid. I might do something on, I don't know, entrepreneurship, traveling, stuff that I like to talk a lot about. So we're going to have, I hope we're going to have like a full schedule of workshops parallel to the regular classes at the camp. So that's something I'm really excited about. So more about that if you follow our Facebook group, members of BJJ Globetrotters, or sign up for our newsletter, or look at our website or something like that. So next thing is that I will be off to the first castle camp in Italy in 2 weeks. I'm pretty excited about it because this is a project that took me, I think I started thinking about this like 2 years ago. It's been a lot of work to try and find the right castle and rent it and figure out all this stuff. I think there is definitely a podcast episode where I talk about this. You can try and look it up. I don't remember right now which episode it is, but there's also a blog post. If you go to bjjglobetrotters.com/blogs and look up my profile, you will find a post about the process of finding and renting a castle. So this is something I'm incredibly excited about. For some reason, some of the participants planned this to be kind of like an 80s Miami Vice castle theme. So I've been power shopping a little bit on Amazon Italy for white suits and interesting sunglasses and inflatable flamingos. So we'll see how that goes. I'll be sure to post some pictures from that camp. Anyway, after the interview of the episode, Ruadhán MacFadden is a guy I've been running into at a handful of camps, and I always wanted to sit down and talk with him, talk more about what he's doing, because I follow his Facebook page and everything he posts, and I'm really fascinated I feel like I'm fairly good at traveling off the beaten path, but this guy's on a completely different level. It seems like he puts so much time and effort into researching places to go that you would never ever think about. So I think it's really interesting to hear how he's doing that and talk a little bit about the places he's been going. And this was the first time I actually had an opportunity to sit down and talk with him about what he's doing. And it was a very interesting time. Kind of flew by, and it was an hour and a half interview, but I've cut it down a little bit. So I hope you'll enjoy it, and I'll be back with you after the interview is over, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the questions I got on the Facebook group. Where do you see BJJ Globetrotters in 10 years? And will there ever be camps longer than a week? So we'll talk about that after the interview. But for now, enjoy the interview with Ruadhn. He is Irish, and he lives in Heidelberg, where we also do the fall camp this year, and we did it last year. So enjoy. So live from the Arctic Circle, am I right?
Yeah, well within the Arctic Circle.
Well within the Arctic Circle. We have Ruadhn MacFadden. Do you want to introduce yourself really quick before I just start reading up from my long list of stuff I've noted about you?
Yeah, sure thing. First of all, props on getting my name right. You're one of the very few people who I think got my name right before you even met me, and like that is very, very odd. Even the majority of Irish people that I met fucked my name up for a few weeks before they managed to nail it. So my name is Ruadhn. As I just mentioned, I am Irish. Been living in Germany for the past 6 going on 7 years though. Been training BJJ specifically for Oh God, I think my first ever class was in something like 2004. I was doing boxing at the time, and first ever exposure to moderately fast internet. I landed on ShareDog and watched a few Mirko Cro Cop highlight videos.
Nice.
Discovered MMA and tried BJJ, and I absolutely hated it. Like first few classes, I was like, this is the weirdest. Like, I just think, no, fuck this. I think maximum 3 classes, and then I went straight back to boxing.
Right.
So my first ever BJJ exposure was 2004. And then when I actually got hooked on it, when I decided to go back for round 2, that was 2010, I think. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I've been training since 2010. Purple belt. And I mean, you know how it goes. Like when I think back now, to think like, oh man, if I just kept going from 2004, would have had that black belt by now. But it's the same as like you see these guys who are like, fuck, I started BJJ when I was 55. Or that guy who showed up at your club there, was it last week? He's in his 70s or something.
I gave, it was his 70th birthday.
70th birthday, yeah. Right. And I mean, you have people who are saying their 50s and they're like, oh man, if only I started BJJ when I was 40 or 30, right. Where could I have been now? But, fuck it, you start when you start and you do what you can. So, I've been training BJJ now since 2010, purple belt, living in Germany. Basically just try and travel as much as I can. I do have a proper 9-to-5 job, so I'm not like full on digital nomad or anything like that. But Germany being Germany, they give you a shitload of vacation days, and I do my best to use them as best I can. Hence why I am now well within the Arctic Circle, trying not to freeze my face off.
And I think, as we talked about, I mean, we could have done this interview any day, really. I mean, it's not really a rush. I'm not going to publish this until probably maybe 3 or 4 weeks from now on or something, because I have another one coming up. But so we thought we had to do it as the first live Caribbean Arctic Circle podcast.
Exactly.
Like, there's no way around it. Even though I have a camp here starting tomorrow, I sit here with a list of 25 people arriving today by ferry and boat, and I have to go pick them all up, and they're probably all late because it's snowstorm in Paris, and it's the Caribbean, so everybody's always late here. And it's kind of a mess, but somehow we managed to pull it off still, just because this was the only day we could actually do the interview.
Yeah, it's just awkward timing, and I was keeping track of the Facebook group for the camp, and I was like, Jesus Christ, all this weird shit that's been happening, like a fucking dumpster fire on St. Martin, and it seems like everyone who's flying out of Paris, their flights are getting cancelled. So right. I was thinking, Jesus, you probably got a hectic schedule on your hands today. I'm up here to do a training course, which is only on for 3-4 days. So, it's I'd be, halfway busy, let's say, the next few days. But, fuck it, we made it happen. Right. Fingers crossed. As I said, the internet up here, I thought was pretty decent. I don't know how the audio quality is going to hold up, but listen, for the sake of making the first ever Arctic Caribbean podcast in history, it had to be done.
Even you need to turn off your vibrator on your phone.
Oh, sorry. Does that actually come through, folks?
Yeah.
Okay. So wait, what's the story? Will I hang up and try and shut that off, or because I don't know if I can actually do it while keeping the call going?
Just log off Tinder or whatever you're on there. Arctic Tinder.
Yeah, pretty much. I've all these polar bears just hitting me up.
We'll see.
I don't know. I specifically.
Yeah, I mean, even in terms of technology, this is pretty amazing that we can make this work, because I messaged you a few hours ago with a screenshot of my internet speed test, and it was 0.2 megabit download or something. It's ridiculous. You never kind of know, but I think now it's 1 o'clock here in the afternoon, and I think most French people on the island, they sleep. So this is where I have connection. I have 8 megabit. This is unheard of. So you got to hit the nap time, the island nap time. Well, we got onto a bit of head start there. Let's get back to your current location. I was just writing down a few things here from preparing this interview, and as far as I remember, I met you the first time in Greenland, right?
First time, I suppose technically first time I met you was at the Leuven camp in 2015. But I mean, Leuven camp is 300 people there. So
there were 250 people. That's why I didn't only technically met you there.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think I shook your hand there or something like that. But it was just like one face in 300. First time properly was Greenland. Definitely, that was May. When was that? May 2016 or so. It was
Something
me,
like that, yeah.
you, and like 10 other just like crazy random people.
So just for the listeners, what we did there was I used to run a gym in Copenhagen for 15 years, and a guy from Greenland studied in Denmark, and he trained there. And Jason, and when he was studying there, and when he finished his studies as a dentist, he moved back home to Greenland, and he tried to start a little jiu-jitsu club there, and he's been there for some years now, and they still only have like 4, 5, 6 people training there. So I talked to him about coming to visit, and the tickets there are insane, and it's like, okay, fuck it. Eventually, after like 2 years, I managed to figure out how to get there, and then I thought, well, we might as well invite some friends along. Since they have no one to train with. So that's why we did the free Greenland camp to support Jason's little club there. And I think we were 12 people there for a week or something, right? Like half a week or something.
Yeah. It was something like 12 people and about 10 different nationalities. So there's myself, yourself, a few Icelanders like Nelson and Hillary, and like just solid little group of people.
It was very interesting. That was super interesting trip. That really turned out well. And so we're just for the listeners, not the viewers. We're doing it again this summer in Greenland. It's insanely difficult and expensive to get there, but we do it like just the weekend leading up to the Iceland camp. So if anyone is going to the Iceland camp, they can pop over to Greenland and sleep in a tent or something.
Yeah, that the original trip, like back in 2016, that was the very definition of an impulse buy. I think. You just posted a Facebook status basically saying, like, hey, listen, anyone want to go to Greenland in 2 weeks? And I was like, yes, I would. And then I checked flight prices. I was like, oh, you're fucking kidding me. Because, I mean, realistically, you're talking 800-900 euro.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no such thing as bargain flights to Greenland. That doesn't happen. So, I remember I was just about to leave for a weekend in Lithuania. And I was thinking, it's like, man, fuck, it's so expensive and it's on short notice, but first of all, Greenland is the kind of place that I've always wanted to go anyway. And second of all, I thought, man, when are you ever going to get an opportunity to go there under such unique circumstances, to go and train in the sport that you love and help like a little local club full of like just really good guys, really dedicated, everyone there has their heart in the right place. And I just said, okay, fuck it, no, I got to do it. So, cost of flights aside, just booked, done, and then 2 weeks later landed in Greenland. So yeah, amazing, just like such a unique location, unique culture. When I was walking around the streets there, I realized very quickly is like, oh shit, like I don't know anything about Greenland. I was amazed at just how fuck it. Okay, it's a part of Denmark, I think. It's up in the Arctic, I'm pretty sure. But just, how prevalent, the Inuit like language and culture still is just blew me away. So like such a unique location, beautiful landscape. And I'd really recommend it. If anyone is kind of on the fence, just go for it. It is really like once in a lifetime opportunity.
I think for me, at least, it was what struck me the most was one, it was so quiet. It was insane. Like the quietness was almost so loud. It was like popping my ears for just being so quiet. I mean, no kind of trees or not like a lot of birds or anything. It was just so insanely quiet and so remote that just like there were no roads. You couldn't get out of town, and
And I remember there was the one junction in Nuuk, I think, the one set of traffic lights that we somehow kept ending up like at a red light. There's like the one junction. Actually, I think the one traffic lights in the country, and we somehow always ended up at a red light.
We did
while going through town.
Yeah. And a fun fact, I now live on an island with even fewer traffic lights. There's 0 here. So there you go. I think one thing that I really liked about it was I found really fascinating was that it was, how nature is really in charge there, like what Jason told us about. They have like guards around town to look for polar bears in case they enter town.
Polar bear, yeah.
It's crazy. I think in the town, that's the only place in Greenland, I guess, or something. Don't quote me on that. Where you can't exit your house without a rifle. I think anywhere else you need a rifle if you want to go to like the store or anything, just in case there's a bear like tapping your shoulder somewhere.
Yeah, it's exactly like that up here where I am now. There's two towns. I mean, towns inverted commas. They're settlements really. And as soon as you set foot outside of those settlements, you need a rifle and a flare gun. Ideally like tripwires if you're camping. I mean, you basically need to pack, a military rucksack full of ordnance if you want to go camping, because there's 3,000 bears on the archipelago. So that's one of the things that I am learning about when I'm up here, like this training course that I'm going to do for the next few days. One of the modules is polar bear safety. I'm pretty sure they're actually going to give me a rifle. I was like, this could go badly wrong. I was like, you've seen how I operate my phone. So they sent an email saying, hey, listen, okay, how much experience does everyone have with rifles? Like, we're going to try and have a beginners group, an intermediate group, and an expert group. And I was like, okay, what's before the beginners group? What's the don't shoot yourself in the foot group? And I'll be fairly at home there. So listen, talk to me again in 4 days, and I will have the lowdown on all the best like polar bear takedown defense and everything you need to know for Greenland. When are you going back for this next camp? It's June this time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I don't even remember. We do so many camps. It's July, I think, just a few days before the Iceland camp.
Yeah, so that's going to be proper midnight sun then that time of year.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Anyway,
cool.
Yeah, I do remember now that you signed up for Greenland, and I was kind of okay. I just briefly talked to you in Belgium. I remember that now. And the first thing I remember about it was that you said, "Don't bother picking me up in the airport. I'll just walk and find my way, and I'll spend one night in another random town to eat ox sandwich and climb a mountain."
Oh yeah. There was, because when you're flying, I think if you fly from Iceland, you can go directly to Nuuk.
Right.
But if you're flying from Copenhagen, you have to go via Kangerlussuaq, which is, again, just for anyone who's not familiar with Greenlandic geography. So the capital is Nuuk, which is in the southwest. And I don't know what the population is there. It's like 15,000. It's pretty small for a capital. But about maybe 100 or so kilometers north of that, there's this tiny town, like village really, called Kangerlussuaq, with about 400 people. But despite the fact that it's so small, it's the only really international length runway in the country, because it used to be a former US Air Force base. So I had to fly in via Kangerlussuaq. And first day, I just had like a 3-hour layover or whatever, and then hopped on my other plane down to Nuuk, where I met you guys. And then on the way back, I spent a night in Kangerlussuaq, and that was amazing. Like that was one of the highlights of the trip for me, because I was there entirely by myself. There was the one hostel in the town, which was still is probably a converted US military base, and I had it all to myself. So this old, cold, like really fucking weird, just place to sleep. Just me there, huge place, empty corridors, empty rooms. And I got to go for a hike up into the hills around the town. And that was an amazing feeling, because, like talking about the quiet and talking about that sense that nature is in charge. You walk up the hill and you've got civilization behind you, so you can still hear the sounds of the airport, for instance, and you can hear the occasional car horn it's going in the background. But you cross the lip of that hill, and then all of a sudden it's like that noise just disappears. I mean, you could be in the middle of the continent 5,000 years ago. You just have the tundra and the ice just stretching out ahead of you as far as the eye can see. And it's really, really humbling, like when you realize that, just how far that stretches and how few people have been out there. So that was huge, huge highlights of the trip for me. And again, can recommend it to anyone, like just anyone is thinking about going. If you happen to have a night in Kangerlussuaq, like there's great hiking opportunities there. And I say, listen, take it, because it's just another part of that Greenland experience. And it's one that you will get very few places in the world.
Right. Well, I assumed this would happen, because usually when I talk to you, we immediately dive into like crazy stories about places we've gone or something. I did write like two full pages of like notes for this interview, and so far I've only crossed off introduce yourself in Greenland.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So
I didn't even get to introduce.
Way too much shit.
I didn't even get to introduce you yet, but I guess at this point I've probably done that before the interview. I guess. Just a quick. I would say one thing that, well, of course, we met through jiu-jitsu, and pretty quickly I kind of got the feeling that you're, in terms of traveling, you're doing something that I don't know anyone else doing, really. I mean, I always try to kind of travel off the beaten path, and, you know, when I did my round the world trip, I tried as much as possible not to avoid like mainstream destinations and try to find places I knew nothing about and kind of research a little bit, or just randomly pop into a place. And I think it's something I've wanted to be good at, but I think you're like, if I'm like, I'm maybe like a brown belt at traveling to weird places and setting weird things up. I think you're like the coral belt of this skill. It's like, whenever I look at like what the fuck you're doing, I'm like, what the hell? I thought I've been off the beaten path, but you really put some effort into this, I see. And it's kind of fascinating. Like, you're kind of, I know people are going to, roll their eyes right now, but you kind of live the life I dream of a little bit, I know I live in the Caribbean and like, I just do fun stuff, but still, in terms of traveling and kind of, seeing the world and diving into, unknown corners of the world and kind of literature and history, I think you're doing all the stuff I really want to do, but at this point, this life I designed for myself right now, I just simply do not have time for that. Also, for the listeners, Ruadhn has like I think I reached the Facebook friends limit. I sometimes have to unfriend some people. Sorry, to add some new ones. But out of my 5,000 friends, and I never really look at my newsfeed, but I added you as the kind of always show on top on the newsfeed. So anything you post is there, and it's like the most cool. The most favorite stuff on my Facebook. I'm like, yes.
Oh man, you're gonna regret that someday, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, there's some interesting stuff, and I think, and also, I mean, I sit here with a list of the places you've been. I just checked my own list. I've been to 198 kind of destinations in 54 countries. So I think in terms of numbers, I beat you a little bit. What did you write there? 44 countries. I beat you a little bit by 10.
44. Yeah, no, you beat me out on the country front, definitely.
On numbers, but I think that just the places you've been are just ridiculous. And the stories I see you write about where you've been going are just absolutely insane. I mean, it's not even, it's like, it's so far ahead of the game in terms of traveling off the beaten path that I think there's definitely something that people can kind of learn or be inspired by seeing what you do and listening to this or whatever you end up doing with all this experience you have. But how much time do you actually put into, let's get back to your list and the stories of the place you've been later, because I have a sense that this could be a long talk, but let's see. How much time do you actually put into like researching where you're going and like I mean, you must be reading and researching all the time.
But kind of unintentionally so in many regards. So I mean, I'm always keeping an eye out for interesting places. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of that initial spark, like that flash of inspiration that kind of all of a sudden draws my attention to a place. Like, I got a lot of my ideas from books. And I mean, I read a lot of history books and I read a lot of old travel literature, and I'm a big geography geek. So, if I'm popping up in your Facebook newsfeed, you probably see me like just posting maps. I mean,
well, you got me onto the map porn Reddit, and
the like map porn site. Yeah.
One of my favorite Reddits is the map porn.
Yeah, it's
like,
fucking
I can
amazing.
Look at that forever. I actually have in front of me here in my little basement office. I found in a like kind of an old store here on the island. I found like old what do you call it? Like navigational maps of the Caribbean islands. Mm-hmm. And I just never get bored of looking at them much.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Like old historical maps. I mean, modern maps, hiking maps, but I mean, historical maps, definitely. That would be my number one. So, I mean, I basically, my apartment, if you look at my apartment, I don't have wallpaper or anything like that. I have maps. It's like I just live in a giant map, basically. I particularly like maps of places that I've been, and specifically maps that I've used, like hiking maps, because then it's not just this, the superficial decoration in the background. It's actually something that got me somewhere, and got me back safely in most cases. So yeah, like those kind of books that I read, history, geography, travel literature. Most of the time, I'm just reading them purely out of interest because in my head, it just seems like a pretty cool topic. But all of a sudden, it'll mention a place that I never thought of before. So classic example, or classic, whatever the fuck, is a few years ago, I was reading a book called, I think it was called The World Without Us by a guy called Alan Wiseman. And the concept of the book was basically the author looking at what the world would look like in, say, 10, 20, 50, 100 years if all of a sudden all the people disappeared. So basically, snap your fingers, every human being on Earth disappears. What would New York look like in 50 years? What would Paris look like in 50 years? So the way he did his research for that is he went off to these places around the world that are already a little bit isolated or for whatever reason have been abandoned. So there's a city in Cyprus, for instance, that was abandoned during the war, still off limits. So he went there and he said, okay, this is a pretty good... Sorry?
I said, I've actually been there, or actually just outside of it and saw it. I was surprised that existed. I had no idea. It's like a ghost town.
Yeah, neither did I until I read about it in the book. And another place that he went was this forest way off in the east of Poland, like on the border with Belarus. And what it is, it's the only remaining remnant of the original forest, basically the forest that once covered all of Europe. Back before people kind of moved in and said, it's like, okay, trees are kind of nice, but hey, we want a farm and, we need to build houses. So boom, chop all the trees down. This is the one remaining section of that forest, and it's small and getting smaller because the Polish government have recently decided that they need the wood. So, it's the kind of place that who knows if it'll be around for much longer. But I had never heard of it before I read this book. And all of a sudden, right there's that initial flash of inspiration. So I just went off and Googled it, figured where it is in a modern sense. What country is it in? Where do I need to fly to? Where do I need to get a train to? Do I need any visas? Blah, blah, blah. And then maybe 3-4 months later, I'm walking around that forest in Poland, hiring a bike and cycling into Belarus to check out the Belarusian side. So that's just an example of how I would get an idea just completely without intending it from some book that I'm reading. So in that sense, yeah, I'm always kind of reading, researching. And there's always just little, flashes, just little things coming up where I think, okay, that's cool. I'm going to put that on the list. That sounds interesting. Let me look into that. So one thing that's been on my mind that I haven't done yet, and I'm looking into maybe doing it later this year, is there was another book I was reading in 2-3 years back called In Search of Night, which is about basically how rare it is in our modern world to be able to see a really, truly clear night sky. So, Europe, if you look at a light pollution map of Europe, Europe is fucked. Your chances of being able to see actual stars in Europe are, slim to none. And that got me thinking. I was like, oh, shit, yeah, I don't think I have ever seen a really, really clear night sky. Because I've been some places that are really remote, but I don't know, for whatever reason, either it was cloudy or it was too cold. And I was like, no, fuck this, I'm staying in my tent. I thought, okay, this is something I have to do. I have to go somewhere and I have to see a really, really just vibrant night sky. And one place that I looked into where apparently you can do that quite easily is in Wadi Rum, which is the desert in Jordan. And it's right beside Petra as well, which is, UNESCO World Heritage Site, ancient stone city. And all of a sudden I got thinking, hey, that's potential for a long weekend there or just whenever I have the time, fly to Jordan, check out Petra, head off into the desert for a few days. Apparently you can stay at nomad camps when you're out there. Just, lie under the stars and...
okay, so wait, I got to pause you a little bit. Okay, you get the idea. You want to fly to Jordan and I'll just stay in the desert for a few days. Okay, how do you do that? Like, what's the practical steps to figure out how you get into the desert, stay there? How do you find a tent? How do you bring food? Like, what are the practical steps to actually do that?
Practical steps, I Google everything. So in terms of flights, like my go-to is Skyscanner. Skyscanner just to find the best deals. Wikitravel is a good option for figuring out the best airport to go to. So Wikitravel, just for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically like Wikipedia, but for travel. It's got a lot less editorial standards. So, it's kind of written by whoever wants. It's full of spelling mistakes, but it's also full of really, really solid info. So if you find a particular town or city or region that you want to go to, it is very often a good way to point out the best airport. It'll say, okay, no, don't go there. Like the transfers are, you got fuck all transfers available. Try this airport instead. So just say by a combination of Googling or going to sources like that, I'll pick out my entry point. Skyscanner is an excellent way to find cheap flights. So you can either choose specific dates. You can say, look, I'm going to fly out to Frankfurt. I want to fly to that airport. Give me whatever options you have in the month of October. And then you can compare right there in chart form. Okay, that date costs 200 quid. That day costs 800. And you can start planning, your start and your end point. In terms of what to do when you're on the ground, again, that is really location dependent.
Let's pick the specific. Like, how on earth did you practically manage to get into the desert and stay there for a few days? I'm sure most people would just kind of Google for a hotel in Jordan and a taxi to the airport. Right?
Yeah. Well, again, this is something that I haven't done yet, so this is all theoretical.
Oh, right.
This is something for maybe future, maybe a few months, like at the end of summer. Because, an Irishman in the Jordanian summer is probably not the best combination. So I'm thinking maybe September, October. So this, all theoretical. But again, Wikitravel, all of a sudden, you're scrolling through the Wikitravel page for Petra and you see a link to like a nomadic tour operator. And then you Google that guy and you get to his webpage, or you get to say some TripAdvisor testimonial, and you say, okay, this kind of sounds like what I would be into. I can meet him at Petra, go to this nomad camp, spend 2-3 nights there. I can just wander off, a few hundred meters, spend a few hours on my own, just go back. The tent will be there waiting for me, stuff like that. So it is very much location dependent, where I'm going, what I want to do, because resources just differ so differently. The number of people who have visited a place depends, or that kind of dictates the level of useful info that you'll get. So if you're going to a very, very off the beaten track location and you try Googling for info there, you might get one blog post or something along those lines. Like you'll just hit a hashtag and you'll get like 2 Instagram photos and you'll be like, okay, I guess that's all the people who have been there. But you're going somewhere more popular, then you have more to work with. So yeah, long story short, it really depends. Wikitravel, I find an excellent source of input kind of across the board. Skyscanner for flights. And then depending on the destination, I'm just going to have to go trolling. Just be willing to spend a lot of time on Google. Subreddit pages, like the subreddit pages for individual countries, are surprisingly good resources as well. Like I was in Belize 2-3 months or so ago, trying to find ferry information. I wasn't getting a reply to emails, wasn't getting a reply to Facebook messages. So I just went to the Reddit page on Belize and I was like, hey, listen, I'm trying to get the boat from, X to Y. Has anyone gotten it recently? Do you know if there's still even an operation? 2 days later, I got a reply from a guy saying, yeah, took it yesterday. All good. Just show up. Cost this much. So, just little bits and pieces like that. But yeah, you got to be willing to put the Google footwork in.
Yeah, you got to put some time into it. I think I've used Skyscanner quite a lot, but I think Google Flights is really catching up as well with in terms of planning and flexibility. So what is I'm looking here at the list of places you've been to and stuff you've done. It's pretty long. We're not going to make this a 10-hour episode, but let's dive into them a little bit. What would be the most difficult trip you've done in terms of like planning or executing? What was the biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge. Kazakhstan was, just purely from an organizational point of view, Kazakhstan so far is the one that took the most effort, because I needed a visa, number one. I mean, with a European passport, traveling is usually quite easy. You just show up, you get your visa on arrival, that's it. Kazakhstan is one of these post-Soviet countries where you actually need a visa. So, I live in Germany. I have to drive up to Berlin. No idea what kind of paperwork they specifically want. So I basically just like print off every conceivable thing, like, proof of health insurance or, whatever. Just basically like throw 20 pages at her. And again, I'm trying to see what she's saying back to me in this like heavily Russian accented German. Fingers crossed, hoping I get my visa. So before I even get there, like, it took a lot more work than the usual destination. Things like train tickets, trying to work a Kazakh railway website where your two choices are Kazakh and Russian, and both are in Cyrillic. And I spend, I think, 30 minutes, like basically pasting everything into Google Translate. I was like, sweet, I've got my destination, I've got my arrival point, I've got the date, I've got the class of seat I want. All I have to click is pay, and then all of a sudden I get this bizarre error message just over and over and over, and it refused to let me proceed. And whatever the fuck, I couldn't paste the text of the error message into Google Translate, so I had to take a screenshot of it and post it on Facebook saying, hey, listen, is there anyone out there who happens to read Russian and can tell me what the fuck the problem is? And long story short, they wouldn't. You can only pay for a train ticket with a Kazakh credit card. So just like obstacle within obstacle within obstacle within obstacle. Once actually there, like once on the ground, no hassle, like everything very, very punctual, everyone's very friendly, but just from paperwork, logistics, language, alphabet as well, because, you're not just trying to decipher another language, you're trying to figure out, like, hang on, what fucking sound does that one make again? So that one, another polar bear message. Trying to find places to train as well. So, I mean, I always do like to train when I'm on the road, but trying to find BJJ schools in Kazakhstan, that took some work because no one really uses Facebook there. It's all this, in Russia and in Russian-speaking countries, they use VK. So trying to find someone that I can actually have a conversation with in advance and say, hey, listen, I will be in town these nights. Do you mind if I show up? Is there a mat fee? Is it gi? Is it no gi? Blah, blah, blah. Like just trying to work out the etiquette. There's basically a barrier, an extra barrier in everything that I had to do. But as on the ground, no complaints. Everything worked out fine.
Did you find a place to train jiu-jitsu there? Or?
I did, yeah. Like ultimately, I think it was like 15 minutes away from my hotel around the corner. Everyone very, very friendly, limited levels of English, and I have significantly more limited Russian. But I mean, you know how it is, like jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. So,
yeah.
Once you slap hands, everyone speaks the same language.
That's easier. Is everything else around it? So what did you do in Kazakhstan?
Kazakhstan, I took a train from. There's two main cities in Kazakhstan. One of them is the new capital that they built in the 90s, and the other one is the old capital. So I got a train between the two, which was 22 hours just out across the open steppe, which is beautiful. It was long because, I mean, growing up in Ireland, you basically, you get anywhere within 3 hours. So the thought of a 22-hour train journey, it just kind of still blows my mind. Beautiful landscape, though, just like open steppe. No mountains, no nothing, just sky as far as the eye can see. Did some hiking when I was there down in Almaty because like Kazakhstan, I suppose in general, is quite flat. Like it is the open steppe like Mongolia or a lot of Central Asia. But once you get down into the south, near to the border with Kyrgyzstan and China, you get into mountainous territory. So I hiked up a mountain. And I think talking about challenging, like just in terms of pure physical challenge, I think that is quite possibly the most tired I've ever been. And I do not know why. I don't know if it was residual jet lag. I don't know if I'd eaten something weird. I don't know if it was altitude because it was up at like 3,600. But I've never, ever felt just so absolutely physically fatigued in my life. I had to stop every 5 steps and just take a breath and then pretend, like kind of just try and trick my ego into like, no, I don't actually need a break. I just want to take a photograph or something. But it's just, it was the longest and most laborious mountain climb I've ever done. And trained when I was there and drank some fermented camel's milk because, you know, you got to try something weird when you're off somewhere like that.
Of course. Let's do a quick, like a Hyperloop trip to the next destination I see here on your list. Argentina, trained in the southernmost jiu-jitsu club in the world. Let's hear about it.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, again, this is the self-proclaimed southernmost BJJ club in the world. But, I mean, I don't have any reason to doubt them unless someone throws down some mats in Antarctica. I'm willing to give them that medal. That was another hiking trip. So I wanted to go way, way, way down south to Tierra del Fuego and hike the southernmost circuit in the world because I'm like, everything down there is the southernmost something or other. So that was back in 2014, I think. Flew to Buenos Aires, then flew from Buenos Aires like way down to the southernmost tip of Argentina to a city called Ushuaia. And then from there got a boat across to this little island called Isla Navarino, which belongs to Chile. And I remember it was actually in Greenland. I remember talking to Nelson about this because, you know, Nelson is from Chile originally. And I was like, oh, hey, you know Bernardo O'Higgins? And he was like, yeah, fucking everyone in Chile knows Bernardo O'Higgins. And this is like this little tiny Chilean village, like this island at the absolute end of the world. There's a plaza right in the middle of it called Plaza Bernardo O'Higgins and just a little statue of him. And Bernardo O'Higgins, and I hope I'm getting this right, is basically the Chilean George Washington. Like he's the father of their independence movement. So every town, every village, like every kind of urban center in Chile has a street or a square or a statue named after him. But his father came from Ireland, and specifically he came from my hometown. So I remember when I was growing up, you know, I was walking past this little statue in my hometown, which was to Bernardo and Ambrosio O'Higgins. And at the time, I had no idea who they were, and I had no idea where Chile was. Like, Chile was just a word. You know, it was an abstraction. It was this place on the other side of the planet that I would probably never, ever visit. And then, you know, fast forward 15, 20 years, I'm wandering around this little village, again, the absolute end of the end of the end. And I walk across Plaza Bernardo O'Higgins, which I just thought was interesting, you know, that I'm so far from home, and yet I see this this little reminder just right there. So yeah, that was a hiking trip. There was a hiking circuit on that island, the Dientes de Navarino. I did that. Another like really physically tough hike. That was one that I actually, you know, a few weeks or a few months beforehand, I was actually questioning how sensible it was to do because it's very remote. The trail is not that well marked. You have to navigate your own way through it. You have to have a map. You have to have a compass. You have to have a good sense of direction. You know, if something goes wrong out there, like if you just like turn the wrong way, your ankle just, you know, pops or your knee pops or whatever, you know, there's no rescue service out there. And even if there was, like, there's no phone service. So you gotta drag yourself back. You're responsible for yourself every single step of the way. And yeah, that was intimidating beforehand. Like, I was looking at that map probably every day for about 2 to 3 months beforehand, trying to burn that route into my head, just kind of trying to convince myself that, like, yeah, you'll be fine, don't worry. You know, if you get lost here, you can. That is, the island is called Isla Navarino. And it's right down off the southernmost tip. It's off the tip of Argentina, even though it belongs to Chile. And that took me 3 days, that hike. And it was not relaxing at all, because every time you lose sight of, say, someone's footsteps, then the doubts kick in. And then you start asking yourself, shit, did I take the wrong turn? Did I go left when I should have gone right? Am I going to be able to find my way back? So it was like, it was one of these things that I think I enjoyed in retrospect, but at the time, it's just adrenaline and fatigue. So that's how I ended up there, and then went training with the guys in Ushuaia afterwards. Who, as I said,
how was the training there?
Very, very basic. So I think at that point they were all white belts, and the head coach was a blue belt. So I mean, very young club, and I mean, it's so isolated, so it's understandable. And the one thing I remember about it is that everyone was spazzy as fuck, like super nice, no assholes. Everyone like shook my hand, and they did the cheek kiss thing, which again I was like, we don't usually do this. We don't usually do this.
Did they do that before you drowned, or?
Yeah, no, they. Do they do that in St. Barth as well? Because I mean, that is a French tradition too, isn't it?
Just male female usually.
Okay, yeah. So in Argentina, they seem to do it man as well. Yeah. And again, I'm always convinced I'm going to fuck this up, or I just go for like the manly shoulder pat and try and leave it at that. But so like everyone's super nice, but just ultra spazzy, and I think that was because, I mean, in a quote unquote like a normal BJJ club where you have higher belts, that kind of white belt spazziness gets rubbed off pretty quickly. Like if someone is spazzing out, you just make him roll with the big purple belt a few times, and then all of a sudden he calms down. That kind of higher belt maturity kind of rubs off on the lower people. But in a club where it's basically all white belts and one blue belt, that's probably just how they think training works. It's like you slap hands and it's just Tasmanian devil for 5 minutes, like just elbows and hair everywhere. So it was like ultra, intense. But as I said, everyone really, really nice.
I always found that one thing that there was unexpectedly complicated about traveling was the whole kind of greeting handshake thing that changes everywhere in the world, and you always make a fool out of yourself, like you said, with the cheek kiss and.
The cheek kiss, yeah.
The strangest is the one thing I've done the most is, if you go to a country where I could list the first 25 ways of shaking hands or slapping hands or something, not in jiu-jitsu, but just like in general. And the one thing that I've done a few times is, you try to shake someone's hand, they put it out, but the moment you kind of grab it, they were actually doing a slap bump. So they pull it back. So I end up just grabbing the tip of their fingers and shaking that. That's like super awkward, especially if it's someone you just met. Just grab their fingers and shake them.
Yeah, I think I've probably instigated quite a few of those on the road at some point as well.
Okay, let's. Did you ever make it down to the Antarctic?
No,
is that also your last continent you haven't been to? I mean, is this a race between you and me?
I haven't been to, in terms of continents, I haven't been to Africa at all yet, which is something that I definitely have to check off the list. And I haven't been to Australia.
So we haven't. We're not racing to the Antarctic yet.
No, I mean, listen, I would love to go there. And when I was down in Ushuaia, I did look at, I didn't look into it because I was there for the hike, and I said, okay, and I'm just going to focus on this. But I did just out of interest check into, prices and stuff.
It's also kind of expensive,
Ushuaia,
right?
Oh, it's ludicrously expensive. I mean, cheapest tickets was something like 10 grand.
Yeah.
And that's just the boat ticket from Ushuaia out to Antarctica, and you're in like a shitty little cabin with 4 other people. You still have to get there. You still have to buy all your gear and basically any other additional expenses. So I would love to go and check out Antarctica at some point, but just I think realistically, as a civilian, like if you're a scientist or if you're in the military, you've probably got other options. Mm-hmm. But as a civilian, your only way of getting there is basically on one of these cruises.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just kind of clashes with the way that I like to travel. Like, I do not want to be squished into a cabin with 4 or 5 other people for, 3 days to get there. And then it's not like they just drop you off in Antarctica and say, okay, go explore wherever you want. We'll pick you back up in 2 or 3 days. Like, it's so tightly controlled.
Yeah.
You're basically brought off the boat in installments of 15. You say, hey, go take a selfie with that penguin, get back on the boat. It's so tightly controlled. So I don't know. I think just for the cost of getting there, and then to me, I don't know, it just feels like it'd be too much of a theme park.
But just imagine that selfie with a penguin in Antarctica on social media. Imagine it right now. How many likes do you think you're going to get for that?
I don't know, man. Well, let me try and get one with a polar bear while I'm up here first, and then I'll have a baseline to compare it with.
Okay, so from hiking in Argentina, I'm just going to pick something random on your list here. Walked across Liechtenstein after 3 separate attempts.
3 attempts, yeah. That was, again, I did that after coming back from Argentina, and that was weather. Both times that fucked me over, and I had to start again. And I remember telling, I was like one of the girls at work about this, and she found it hilarious. She was like, listen, you can get back from Tierra del Fuego in one piece, but like Liechtenstein, of all places, will kind of stimmy you. And I was like, yeah, listen, fair enough. Like Liechtenstein is tiny and it's like a nice little tax haven where everyone is friendly and happy. But mountains are mountains, and I'm not going to fuck with a mountain when the snow is too deep to get past. So basically, I tried twice to hike across the country. There's one hiking path there. I think it's called it's been a few years now. I think it's the Panorama Weg. And it goes over some pretty high mountains. And my problem was I just tried it too early in the year. I tried it in May, I think it was, and the snow was just too deep. And like I'm pretty fucking stubborn when it comes to things like this. Like sometimes it is a battle between stubbornness and common sense. And I was standing there like at one particular point on the mountainside, like where the trail passed, and just kind of staring at this bank of snow, just weighing up the pros and cons of trying to clamber across it. And I looked over the edge and I thought, listen, one wrong step here and you're done. It's not like, oh, hey, I slide a little bit and I feel a little bit foolish and I have to try again. It's like if you slide, you are done. You fall off the edge of a cliff. So I said, no, look, common sense wins this time. Turn around, try again. And it took me 3 times altogether to pick the right time of year and eventually get across Liechtenstein. Beautiful country. I mean, in terms of the landscape, it's basically Switzerland. So, I mean, anyone who likes alpine territory, I can really recommend Liechtenstein. Just, pick the right time of year because, as I said, you do tend to get lulled into this sense of false security because like everything is, Liechtenstein's probably the safest place in the world. I mean, there's basically no crime. Everyone is rich. There's more registered companies than there are people. It's like millionaires here. Oh, that's the Prince's Castle there. But listen, mountains are mountains, and mountains don't give a shit where you are. So, as it always, I always try and keep that in mind.
Norway, hike through the woods.
Norway. Was that the one? The old wooden church?
I don't know. I just read something about Norway here in your list. I was intrigued to hear about it.
If I remember right, that was I wanted to hike off through the woods to this old church that had been burnt down by one of those black metal musicians back in the 90s. That was the first, I think actually the first ever solo trip that I did. That was back in 2008, I think it was. And I was like, when I look back on it now, I had no experience traveling solo at all. So I show up to Norway in the middle of wintertime and I basically have like just a jacket. That's it. I have no idea how to dress for the cold and I have no idea how to travel. I get on a 7-hour train and I have nothing to read and I have no music. And I was like, oh, wait, hang on. This was, I got to plan this a little bit better. So that was definitely the baby steps of the traveling, like the learning curve. But that hike, if you can really call it that, was me just kind of clambering and stumbling and slipping my way out through the woods to find this old church. And at some point I was like, okay, I'm kind of getting the hang of this now. Like I'm learning how to balance on ice and I'm working up a proper pace. And this whole like walking through knee-high snow thing isn't too bad. And then all of a sudden I just like look over my shoulder and I see this old woman who's about 85 on snowshoes, just like casually outpacing me, not a care in the world. And she said something in Norwegian, and I was just like, yeah, I'm an idiot. I know that. Yeah. And then, yeah, just out there, saw the church back in. But yeah, looking back on it now, I said that was, it's just where you want to kind of shake yourself. It's like, what the fuck were you thinking? It's like, learn how to plan.
Why do you prefer to do all this alone, or?
Things like hiking, definitely. Hiking for me is very much, it's almost like moving meditation, if I can call it that. So I have gone hiking with other people, and I do like it. Listen, you put me in the middle of a landscape like that, there's no way I'm not going to like it. But when I'm on my own, it's a different experience. And it is almost a different activity. It's, I can just sort of shut my brain off. I don't have to worry about, what did that person say? Now I have to respond. Are they doing okay? Can they keep up with me? Are they thirsty? Do we need to stop? Even if that other person doesn't talk, it is a presence there that's always going to be, that you're always going to be aware of. So hiking specifically, I do always prefer to do it alone. And it's not always pleasant. Take the Tierra del Fuego hike, for instance. I did that on my own. And it was intimidating as fuck, like both beforehand and during it. I had to plan everything. I had to make sure the map was up to date. I had to make sure all my equipment was good. I had to make sure I packed enough food and I could carry enough food. And then once I was out there, it was entirely up to me. I had to find the trail. I had to cook. All the doubts were on me. And that burden would have been lessened if I had gone with someone. I could have said, okay, you take care of this, you take care of that. When you're out there, it's, let's just say you lose the trail. You have someone else to kind of, to share that doubt and to share the burden of then deciding, okay, which way am I going to walk now? Am I going to walk this way and hope I can reach the trail again? Or am I going to walk this way and I go way off into the middle of the island and that's it, I'm fucked. So there would definitely be benefits to going hiking with people. There's no doubt about that. It's just safer. At the end of the day, it is just safer. But when I think about how I felt when I got back from that hike and all the burden was gone, and I was, my shoulders were sore because I'd been carrying this, 20K pack for the past 3 days, and my feet were cut, and every bone just felt like it was, about to fall apart. But just the sheer level of enjoyment and satisfaction that I got out of that afterwards, when I realized what I had done, and when I could really sort of start sifting through all the little experiences that I had out there, I wouldn't have had that if I had someone else there with me or if I was with a group. So hiking for me specifically is definitely a solo activity. Traveling in general, I suppose, yeah, I've definitely been inclined to do it more on my own, but it depends on the people, depends on the group. Hiking, no, yeah, I'm definitely gonna try and just jealously guard that to myself for as long as possible.
Do you think, and this is something I think about a lot, or not a lot, but I think about it, with technology and everything, the world seems really small suddenly. You can get anywhere, if you want, and you just look it up on Google Flights and you grab a ticket and you go see somewhere. I find that traveling is very easy, but that also kind of takes away the adventure aspect of it. It takes an effort to make it difficult. I obviously I kind of do the same with the camps. I don't want to do any camps that are easy to do. I don't want to do any destinations that are, that anyone could do. It has to be, it must be it must be a destination that would take an effort to get to if you did it on your own, and thereby, take an effort for me to set up. So do you kind of feel the same, that you have to, obviously you're doing the most difficult trips you can possibly come up with, kind of, do you feel like you have to, that this makes it better for you? You have to put in an effort into making travel difficult in order to kind of get something out of it. If compared to if you spend a week in an all-inclusive resort in the Canary Islands.
Yeah. I'm definitely more attracted to those kind of off the beaten track destinations. There's no doubt about that. and variety of destinations as well. And I think that is something you also mentioned that you try and do with the camps is not just that you want them to be, like I say, a little bit difficult to get to, but you want to incorporate diversity. So, one camp, you're in this replica Japanese village in the middle of nowhere in Poland, then you're in Greenland, then you're in a castle in the middle of Umbria, and so on. So this kind of creating contrast in travel, which is something that I really, really like as well. Like, I do like going difficult places, and I do like going places that are specifically very far north. So, Greenland, Iceland, Svalbard, and so on. But I do like, just swerving off and trying someplace completely differently. So a month or so ago, I was in Mexico and Belize with my girlfriend. And, we were sitting on the beach in nice, mild, whatever you want to call it, 25, 26 degree weather, sipping coconut rum. And on the surface, that's the kind of thing where I'd be like, man, am I on the beach drinking coconut rum? I was like, oh, that's not the kind of thing I usually do. But it's, hugely enjoyable. Like, it's an experience. And the fact that now I'm here in a hostel, like at the end of the world, where if I walk 5 minutes in the wrong direction, I need to bring a rifle with me because there's polar bears out there. Like, that's a phenomenal just contrast of, landscapes and people and languages and, just experiences. So I do definitely try and go off the beaten track. I appreciate the challenge that it brings, and I appreciate what it lets you see. But, it doesn't all have to be that for me. Like, I am perfectly happy to, occasionally, I would go off and do, say, an all-inclusive thing for a weekend, let's say, just to see what it's like, just for that contrast, But as a whole, no, it wouldn't be my thing. I do like to, just like take a map of the world and throw a dart at, some of the most far-flung places I can find.
I really think from my experience too, that contrast is really key. It's if you can do that like 2 or more high contrast experiences, that really triggers something. I'm not sure what it is, but every time I've done it, it's like, shit, this was great. And it's also on my camp list. I want to do a contrast camp at some point. It's been on the list for a few years. I still haven't found the right way to do it, but it would be amazing to, have everyone, I don't know, be somewhere like Greenland, middle of the week, rent a plane and fly to the Caribbean or something like that. Cool. We'll see if I can pull that off. But I have a few ideas for next year actually, but it's still, even though if it's 90% doable, it's not doable. Everything has to work out. And, I'm not sure about renting a plane, but we'll see. Maybe I'll pull it off one day. I would need a logo on that plane, and it would need to get on social media, by the way. That would be very important.
Well, there is already the BJJ Globetrotters boat, isn't there? So, I mean, add a plane to the list. And
that's right. We have a boat. We have a boat, yeah. And I think we can pull it off one day. We'll see. So can you quickly tell us where you are right now, and what the fuck are you doing there, Ruadhn?
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, so where I am right now, I am in Longyearbyen, which is the capital of Svalbard, which is this Norwegian-owned territory way up by the North Pole. So again, capital, quote unquote, there's like 2,000 people here, most of which are Norwegian. The second highest nationality is actually Thai. And I'm told that's because back about 20, 30 years ago, this guy in Oslo, who was originally from Svalbard, married a Thai woman, and then they moved back up here. And then 20, 30 years, like her family and friends just gradually trickled over. And now there's like 170 Thai people here. According to the...
How is it? Yeah. Can you get some good Thai food there? There must be some great Thai food.
There's one Thai restaurant, which I haven't tried yet, but it is definitely on the list.
Oh, you have to.
There's 2 Irish people here, apparently. Like, I got to look at the census. Basically, there's 2 Irish people here, so I need to find them as well. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm doing a training course on guiding. So I came up here about a year and a half ago for the first time in June 2016, I think it was. So right in the middle of summer when it was midnight sun and it was high season, so very, very busy. And I just really clicked with the place. If you were to ask me why, I can't really say why. I just really click with the place. I love the fact that it's so far flung. I love the fact that you are right in the middle of the wildest nature. So my hostel is right out on the outskirts of the town. So I'm just I'm looking out the window now, and I'm looking out into just snow and darkness. So I go out the front door and I turn left, and I go over one little ridge, and that's it. There's no more lights. There's no more signs of civilization. It's just ice and mountains and sky.
I'm going to the beach after this, Ruadhn.
Yeah, this is the thing. Talking about contrast, it's due to be minus 15 tomorrow here, and I think you've got like what 26, 27 there at the moment.
It's a little bit windy, so it feels kind of cold. It's 26 degrees.
Cool. Yeah. So no, very, very, very different experiences that we have ahead of us over the next 24 hours.
Absolutely.
So what I'm doing is a guiding course, and as it's not that I'm thinking of really coming up here and guiding full time or anything like that, but it's just something that I would find interesting. So you do this course and you get to see and learn about aspects of the region and aspects of the town that you wouldn't if you just visit. You get to meet the governor, for instance. You get to meet the local rescue service. You get to do things like polar bear safety, first aid, safe ways to travel on sea ice and stuff like that. So it's really just something that I looked at and I thought, hey, this seems like a cool way to spend 3 or 4 days when I'm up there. So that is kicking off tomorrow morning. I have no idea what it's going to be like. Like, you have to pass a test first thing in the morning before they let you continue. So a test just on local history, local geography, local politics. So that's basically what I was doing. Like, while I was waiting to have this call, I was just here reading up on all of my Svalbard material. So I have no idea what it's going to be like. Like, as I said, they're going to give me a rifle at some point. I'm Irish. I've never even seen a rifle before, so this could go badly wrong or it could be awesome. I don't know. But either way, it should be a fun 3 days.
What one thing I'm thinking about all these places you're going, I mean, I know people will be thinking about this. Language barrier. Mm-hmm. You do these super weird places, right? How does this work?
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, as kind of horrible and lazy as it sounds, like, English is such a useful lingua franca now, no matter where you go, that, I mean, look, let me put it this way. I always do try and learn some words of the local language. Sometimes that's just to be polite. So, I'm traveling to Iceland, for example. Everyone in Iceland speaks English. So when I'm learning a few words of Icelandic, it is just to be polite. Yes, no, please, thank you, a few basic numbers. I'm going to Kazakhstan, for instance. It's not a matter of politeness. It's like, I need to learn some Russian because, like, no one there speaks English. Some people do, and I mean, you can I basically just Tarzan my way through everything. A few words of the local language if necessary. You'd be amazed. I mean, you traveled a lot as well, so you probably realize, like, just how useful just like gesturing and making an idiot of yourself comes in. So, I mean, way up here, I said, this is a Norwegian territory. So, Norway being Norway, basically everyone speaks English. There are so many other nationalities here that English is basically, the lingua franca. Down in Tierra del Fuego, I had to learn a little bit of Spanish. Kazakhstan, I had to learn a little bit of Russian. I'm going to Siberia this coming May. Definitely going to have to learn a little bit of Russian there. So the thing is, I mean, I'm the way I put it is, and I think I even put this on my notes, is like, listen, I speak like 1.86 languages, and that number changes every day. So, English native speaker, my German is basically a blunt instrument. I can get by with it. I can have a conversation about pretty much anything in it, but it's not pretty. And then I have just like so many little scatterings of shitty French and shitty German or shitty Russian or shitty, whatever my next destination is. And then you just like mix that all together and you just like bang your chest and point and mime eating and you'll get there. And, I actually recently just realized, I mean, almost the advantage of that in comparison to someone who speaks other languages fluently. And how it happened was, I said I was going to Mexico and Belize with my girlfriend, and she speaks like 5 languages fluently, 5.5. And because she is so comfortable with communicating in so many places in the world with so many people on basically a native level, she is not comfortable with trying to communicate in a language that she's not 100% in. So I would be perfectly happy going to Russia and just trying to spend 2 weeks grunting at people, just, drawing a picture of a train ticket and holding it up and just kind of pointing to me and saying "to" or whatever. Like, that would be fine for me. Whereas she's so used to just like mastering every language that she needs. You put her in that situation and all of a sudden, she doesn't like it. So I would say the one advantage to just being like a stubborn, grammatically mangled Anglophone like me is that you just kind of accept the fact that you're going to be shit at whatever language you need, and you just jump in head first and go for it.
Did this take some? I mean, for me, it took some practice, because it's intimidating to try and communicate with someone where you don't speak the language. And I remember when I was younger and I was traveling on my own for the first few times, it was so intimidating for me to go into a store or something, or ask someone, buy a train ticket or something. It was like I would have such a knot in my stomach, and it could take hours for me to gather the courage. How's this been for you?
Well, I mean, I will say I do encounter that as well, because I have noticed. I think I draw a division between my German and the other little languages that I attempt, because the other little languages that I attempt, I know, listen, I'm very visibly a tourist. As long as I can get my point across, they'll appreciate it and I'll appreciate it. With my German, because I've been there now for 6 years, I do have that, if I'm having a conversation and I'm still at this point where I basically have to form the sentences in my head beforehand, it might only take a half second, but I'm still kind of building that sentence in advance in anticipation of what they're going to ask. And if I build that sentence and I think it's like, oh man, that's all jumbled, and no, that's not the right word, I definitely do feel reluctant there, because I think, oh man, I've been here for 6 years. I should know this a little bit better by now. So that kind of mental block does definitely impose itself for my German, where if I have to go into a situation that I'm not familiar with and I have to use vocabulary that I've never used before. So I don't know, let's say I have to go in and get something fixed on my car, and it's a lot of automotive vocab that's, I've just looked it up in my phone 30 seconds beforehand, and I'm going in and I'm like just keeping my fingers crossed, just don't ask me this, don't ask me that. I'm kind of monologuing at them, and hopefully I'll get all the information across and then questions won't be necessary. So yeah, that can definitely be intimidating. If I'm in Russia and let's say I want to get a train ticket or I want food, I'm just going to go in and I'm basically just going to grunt at them. And if I have to sound like Tarzan, then I'm going to sound like Tarzan. But if I get food at the end of it, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That if you kind of build it up in your head too much first, what you're trying to say, then you set some kind of expectation that you have to say it correctly. And that can be even more intimidating. Yeah. So do you spend?
Are you learning French over there now?
I am trying. Yeah, it takes a lot of time to learn a language, especially a language like that from bottom up. So time is more my thing. It's still as much as I would love to speak like really nice French here, it's still kind of on the nice to have list. It's not really it's not necessary for me in the day-to-day life. I get along with basic stuff. So
yeah.
How much money do you spend on traveling? It must be a huge chunk of your budget. Is it expensive to do this, like compared to if people do like a regular kind of holiday to, I don't know, big city, hotel, restaurants, or like resort kind of trip?
Yeah. I mean, definitely the farther off the beaten track you go, the more you're going to have to pay for it. I mean, the thing is, like, I don't spend a lot of money on other stuff, so it's not like I really have to budget for traveling and then I have to say, oh man, I can't go and like buy this this like fancy fancy clothes or whatever it is, I guess that's just not really on my radar. So kind of the only thing that I spend money on is traveling, books, tattoos, training, Globetrotters camps, whatever. So it's not like I have to sit down at the start of every month and, like build an Excel sheet to figure out, hey, can I afford this? Like traveling is just basically where my money goes. Definitely the further afield you go, the pricier it's going to be. I mean, I don't really think there's any way to avoid that. So yeah, getting up here, it's doable. Like you can certainly get up here cheaper and easier than you can get to Greenland, for instance. Like Greenland is an unusual case, but a flight up here to Longyearbyen is most definitely, even at its cheapest, going to cost you a lot more than a flight to Paris or to Copenhagen or to Rome if you want to spend a weekend there. But, it's just priorities, I guess. If it's the kind of thing you want to do, then, yeah, you're going to have to shell out for it. Like, there are ways, I suppose, you could do it really, really cheap. Like, I was reading a book last week called An African in Greenland, which is written in the 70s by this guy from Togo, I think, called Tete Michel Kpopomasi. And he basically worked his way over the course of 10 years from Togo all the way up to Greenland. Just jobs here and there. Secretary for 6 months in this office, working in a warehouse for 3 months here. Eventually got to Paris, eventually got to Copenhagen, and then eventually got the boat to Greenland. Again, all just basically hitchhiking, staying in people's couches, working whatever jobs came up. And then he landed in Greenland, where he spent 2 years and became a minor celebrity because he was the only 6 foot tall black dude in the country in 1972. So, listen, you put your mind to it. You can probably get anywhere in the world if you want to. But, I suppose more realistically, if you want to fly, you want to stay, the further you go, yeah, more it's going to cost.
So one thing that I kind of think about a lot in my life is, how do I put this? Smartphone culture, internet, screens in front of your face versus books and seeing the world around you. I think it's obvious that kind of slowly, turned our lives and all our attention onto screens. And it's really difficult, I find it really, I want to just, delete all my social media accounts. I want to, burn my phone. I want an old landline phone. I want to just read books in my hammock. It's kind of difficult with the online kind of business and life I'm leading at the moment. But I think this is something that I really struggle with, to kind of see the world instead of seeing, my smartphone. You must have put some thought into this. How do you approach this?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've definitely thought about, deleting Facebook and just going analog as well. And ultimately I haven't, because I just find it so useful. So, I mean, let's say in terms of traveling, planning a trip, for instance. So, I mean, I don't know how many Facebook friends I have. I don't know, 200 and something, 300. I think you probably have a lot more through the camps. But
it's a difficult distinction. It's a difficult distinction between using it as a useful tool and then as complete waste of life, because it's
waste of time. Yeah, I do try and balance it out. I do really try and make use of the positive side of it, the positive aspects of it that I don't know if you could get it anywhere else. So, I mean, recent example, I said myself and my girlfriend are thinking about going to Southeast Asia, maybe late next year or early next year. And I posted a status on Facebook saying, hey, listen, anyone got any recommendations? And I mean, based on the answers I got there, I mean, I have enough recommendations for 3 trips, basically. And just that kind of instant feedback, that instant source of input, not just from random people, but from people that you know and that you trust. And you're like, okay, I know her. She goes cool places. So if she recommends this temple, it's probably worth seeing. So just that kind of source of input and being connected, like the camps are a great example. It's like I go to a camp and all of a sudden I had 50 people on Facebook, and then that's 50 new stories out there, like 50 new sources of potentially inspiration. I'm seeing them in my news feed, and it's like, oh shit, okay, that guy did this thing at the weekend. I didn't even know that existed. All of a sudden, like that little light bulb goes off. So that's why I'm not too picky, for instance, about like adding people on Facebook. I know some people say like, it's like, no, unless I've met them in real life or whatever. I mean, ultimately, it's not like I'm going around like adding everyone, but ultimately I'm not that picky because, again, that's an extra source of information, source of news, source of, insert thing here. So, listen, long story short, I mean, there have, sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying, like, I try to turn off my phone now, like at least once a day, turn it off and put it in a drawer or something. But even that, I find it kind of difficult, It's like it's calling me a little bit just to check.
Yeah.
Hey, did anyone message me on Instagram or something? It's so unimportant in my life, but still,
that's the thing. You've probably got 10,000 people like getting in touch about like geese or camps or whatever on a weekly basis.
I mean, even as you said, at the camps, it's kind of a useful tool, like especially the bigger camps, for information to people. On the other hand, if a camp turns into a Facebook camp, then it'll completely ruin it. It can. That's why and this is official on the record, I often sabotage internet Wi-Fi routers if people are staying in the same place for a camp. So if the internet is bad, quote unquote, in the Caribbean or in a house in El Salvador or in the forest, that might be because someone pulled the plug from it or something. You know what?
Internet at the winter camp was working fine until you just like disappear into the basement with a screwdriver, and then all of a sudden like things go to shit.
I mean, maybe not. But the last camp here we had here in the Caribbean, to just 3 months after the hurricane, there was still no internet. And, the socializing just goes through the roof. People were playing cards and playing games all night. We purchased some board games, and it was great. And the same at the U.S. camp in the forest in Maine. It's like there is one place on the entire premise where you can get a bit of connection, and it's great. People actually talk, and I see the camps where there's great Wi-Fi, and everybody's just kind of sitting there with their heads down in their news feed, and this is something I really struggle with, because I love technology, but I hate how it kind of disconnects us. But I think maybe because we're kind of in this age right now where it's new and humans are we're kind of getting used to trying to, I don't know, live with it. I don't know if it's going to change. Is there going to be a movement of like an offline movement of people at some point? And like, I don't know. But I'm thinking like what you're doing is kind of the opposite of scrolling through your social media. Like you actually just get out there and, put yourself in the world on some kind of mountain or something. And I hope I won't forget to do that in my life, but at least I'm thinking about this, and I'm trying, and I think one trick that kind of struck me was a trick, I was surprised that this was even something I had to think about. It's like, how do I get rid of my phone? Why do I always think about it? I turned off the vibrator, I turned off all notifications, but I still kind of look at it to see if there was an email or something, and I realized, okay, all I have to do is just turn it off. And I turned it off, and it was like, what? And I don't think I've ever turned off my phone. And like since I got my first smartphone or something, it's been more than 10 years of nonstop connectivity. And that's when I finally turned it off. I was like, well, that was easy, just turned off my phone. Yeah. And I put it in the drawer, I don't know, overnight or something. And when I wake up in the morning, I don't check emails. That's the first thing I do when I open my eyes. And I'm like, this is great. And then like a week later, I'm like, oh, okay, I would like to look at Reddit before I sleep. I spent 2 hours of that in the hammock. But still, I find it difficult. But I think what you're doing is kind of pulling the other direction. And I think that could be, at least it's an inspiration for me to try and not fall into that hole, as you see just one generation before us, I don't know, people in their 20s, I think they're even more into this. So it's difficult anyway. So you have a little project.
Yeah.
You have a little project. Fighting Gods and Fighting Men. Travel through history. I think that's travel through history. That really sums it up extremely well. Let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, basically. Well, this is it's kind of something I just you hear people talking about projects that they've had on their mind for months, years, whatever, and then they finally manage to bring it to fruition. This is kind of the opposite of that. This is just an idea I had one morning, and then that evening I just threw something together. So I know, how do I sum it up? Yeah, travel through history, I suppose, is kind of right there. So, like as I said earlier, I get a lot of travel inspiration from books. So old history books, geography books, travel writing, nature writing, anything that just happens to be about the world or an aspect of the world or a language or an event in history or a people or a piece of landscape. I find I get, number one, a lot of just enjoyment out of reading about it. And number two, a lot of ideas. That's how I ended up in a forest in Poland. It's how I might, fingers crossed, end up in the desert in Jordan and so on. So very often before I go on a trip, like I will try and find some old books, ideally old books, because I find those like old travel books are like really, really cool when you have some guy going through like the Caucasus Mountains in the 19th century on horseback with a rifle and a sword. But any kind of travel book or just like anything that'll sort of tell me about this part of the world that I'm going to, where did it come from? How did it get here? What were the challenges that the people went through? What did they believe? What was their folklore, local religion, whatever? And I always love reading books like that when I'm actually in the location. So when I was in Georgia, reading books about, guys, as I said, like traveling across the Caucasus Mountains in the 19th century. Last time I was up in Svalbard reading about like the mountaineers that kind of hit the mountains here back in the early 20th century. Just something that it just makes you look at your surroundings with a new perspective when you know who's been here before you and what did they do and how did this place just come to be this thing that I see right now. But I often used to find it quite difficult to find books like that. I would Google, like old Georgian travel literature or whatever, and I might get one result and it's been out of print for 50 years or it's all in Russian. And, you'd have to kind of like do some trolling before you actually find something good. And at some point I started thinking, it's like, hey, what'd be really cool is like if you had a central resource, like a library basically for every country in the world where you could say, right, I am going to Jordan in October. What are some books that I can read that will help me learn a little bit more about that country? It might be an old travel log, 300-400 years old. It might be, a book of poetry, a millennium old. It might be something about the political history of the countries, anything like about a mountain in the country. Just any little thing that helps form the big picture. And that's what I decided to do. I was like, okay, that doesn't exist, so I'm going to build it. So I started this project, Gods and Fighting Men, to basically create that library. So ultimate goal would be someone is going traveling and they say, okay, I am going to Sri Lanka. What good books are out there on Sri Lanka? They go to the library, open the bookshelf, list is right there. And then you can buy it on Amazon straight away. Because I wanted to only recommend books that you can actually buy. Buy either a hard copy or buy an audio book or drag it onto your Kindle or whatever. Because I found that was one of the huge obstacles that I used to hit, is that I get a lot of good recommendations and then it would turn out, as I said, oh yeah, there's one copy in this library in St. Petersburg, so have fun. Just instant kind of, this is the book that I want. Boom, click, it's right there. So. Yeah, and as I listen, it's basically just something that I personally would always have liked to have existed. And look, even at the end of the day, if no one uses it except me, then fuck it, I'm going to get some good use out of it too.
That's usually
if anyone else,
sorry, I was just about to say that's usually the best recipe for a good project or a good build something. It's like you fix something for yourself, like an anxiety or something you feel like you really need, and then if someone else wants it, just like me, I want to travel to strange places and train jiu-jitsu, and I fix that for myself, and someone else can join along. So here's the question, Ruadhn.
Yeah.
When will you write that book and call it Gods and Fighting Men? Because now I said it, you have to do it. You're going to have to write a travel history book.
Okay, cool.
Because, your blog is great. I love it. I love all the book recommendations. When I'm 60, I'll get back to it and start reading all of them. But I need you to pick out all the best stories from these and write a book for me, please.
Cool. That is in the works. Because as I'm compiling all of these recommendations, I'm making so many cool discoveries for myself, and I'm sort of kicking myself at the same time because fuck, I'm never going to get a chance to read all these. But yeah, that's the goal. Pick out all the good ones, and yeah, if I have to put them all together in a book, then so be it. Yeah,
well, it makes complete sense that you have to do that.
Cool.
I call it right now. It's my favorite book that's still not existing, but I'm absolutely sure you can write a killer book from all the crazy things you've done.
Cool.
Let's wrap this up. What's next for you?
Next trip is
just in the future, near future, long future.
Near future. Well, next kind of big trip is Siberia in May. So that is Kazakhstan was by far the most logistically complex trip that I've done up until now, and I'm pretty sure Siberia is going to top that because all the horror stories I've heard about trying to get a Russian visa, and again trying to fight with these old ancient Soviet era Cyrillic train websites. And
are you going to Norilsk, which is you know about that town?
Oh, that's the most poisonous town in the world.
The most polluted, the darkest, and something the coldest town in the world.
Yeah.
I read something about it's so fucking it's so funny.
Yeah, it's not funny, but it's nickel mine or something, isn't it?
It's the most depressing place I've ever seen. Apparently, people are genuinely dying from if they wait for the bus for too long because it's so cold. If the bus is delayed, the taxi business is booming because if the bus is late and you're at the bus stop, you will die.
Yeah, well, the place that I am going to, again, it's as far as I know, it's not poisonous, but when you Google it, the top English result is 40 people die from drinking homemade moonshine that some guy brewed in his bathtub. So I don't know. I think if anyone offers me anything in a bottle with no label, I might just have to consider declining. But that's in May, so I'm sure I will be annoying you and everyone else in my Facebook feed with photos and all the other random stuff I discover along the way then.
Yeah, I have a mission for you. You got to get into one of those secret cities in Russia. Have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah. The closed,
the closed off cities.
It's like closed military cities. Yeah, you need permission. I already looked at one of those. Like there's one up in the Arctic, Murmansk. And I was like, man, Russian Arctic, that could be just miserable enough to make an interesting trip.
There's a great, for the listeners, by the way, there's a great documentary on Netflix. I don't remember what it's called, but just Google Russian secret city or something. It's really interesting. It's been closed off since the Cold War. That's where they built the nuclear bombs, and it's insanely polluted, and people are kind of free, but they're not really free. It's very interesting. Highly recommend that one. I'm sure you can recommend a book on that stuff.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm just about to start my own Russian reading now. So in terms of traveling across Russia, if anyone is interested, there's a great book out there about Russian train culture by David Green called Midnight in Siberia. So definitely go and check that one out. I've got a load more lined up. And basically, as soon as I get back here, I'm going to hit my visa and then I'm going to hit the bookshelf.
Right.
So give me another 2 months and then I'll have some proper recommendations.
And I'm sure people can just check Gods and Fighting Men for the recommendations once you've been through them.
Net, yeah.
Once you've been through them,
All right. Well, we've been going at it for an hour and a half. Let's wrap this up.
Oh.
I got to go pick up some people in the airport who's coming in for the camp. So
Mhm.
I have no more time to talk to you.
No worries.
Thanks for being on the show, whatever it is. It was interesting to spend some time talking about this, and I'm going to put a few links in the podcast, the show notes about what we talked about and your website and stuff. So, any famous last words before you wander off into the dark Arctic?
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to do my best to get that polar bear selfie.
Yes, let's see that.
Keep an eye out for that.
You got like 2 weeks to take that before I post this episode. So
yeah, cool.
Right. Okay, Ruadhn, have a nice day and enjoy the wonderful weather of Svalbard. I'll go on with the camp here. We have 50 people coming today and tomorrow, so we're going to be busy.
Yeah, cool. So I said, yeah, have fun. And I think I will definitely see you in Heidelberg in person, if not before then.
Absolutely. I'll see you in the summer somewhere in the world.
Cool.
All right. Take care, man. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, we are back in the basement, and it's time for Christian's Life Coach Corner. I feel like I need like a jingle or something for this. Anyway, here are a few questions I picked up from the Facebook group that I decided to answer in this episode. First one, where do you see BJJ Globetrotters in 10 years? It's an interesting question, and I have no idea really. I would say from the beginning, I've never had like a vision or a business plan. I never even thought this would turn into a business of any kind. It's just, everything is just kind of happening. I think BJJ Globetrotters is like a vehicle for my creativity of making things happen, or at least that's what it's become. I started it, I know, in one way or the other, and I kind of feel like it's living its life on its own right now. It's like a large organism of thousands of people that kind of lives on its own, and I just feed it new ideas and karma here and there, and it keeps growing. I never sat down and thought, hey, I'm going to start a business that makes jiu-jitsu camps 10 times a year around the world. I never even, considered that to be an opportunity. It just everything just kind of happened along the way. And I kind of like it like that. I'm not sure how next year is going to look. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to live in the world. Nothing is really planned, and that's kind of how I like it. So I'm really just going with the flow, and I purposely don't want to plan anything too far ahead. So in 10 years, I have no idea. One of my a question that's come up like a few times from my friends or people who are involved in this somehow, like, is how is this gonna end? Am I gonna do jiu-jitsu camps, roll and party with all the young people until I'm 65 or something? And honestly, I have no idea how this is gonna end. I think the only plus, as I talked with Katla, who was the assistant at many of the camps, we agreed that this cannot just fade out. I can't just do 10 camps a year now and then in a few years I'll do 8 and 7 and it's gonna go down to one big camp. That's not possible. It must end with a bang. I think the only right way for this to end is if I die at a camp. That's the only way this can end in a proper way. I don't plan on dying at a camp. There's not going to be like a euthanasia camp. But that's I don't know. I have no idea how this is going to end. But it's going to be interesting to see. Who knows? Maybe the interest for what I do is going to disappear, and there's not a market for it anymore. Or maybe something traumatic happens and we can't keep doing it, or maybe it just kind of fades out. Maybe I sell the concept to the Gracies and they take over. I don't know. I can't ever see myself selling Globetrotters as a business, for sure. So since Globetrotters is just like a vehicle for my entrepreneurial creativity, then I think it'll just kind of keep going, and whatever I come up with, I'll try and make it happen, and we'll see. Definitely, since I hired Vara full time, my manager full time, I've managed to make a lot of ideas I had happen. Because back when I was doing everything myself, I didn't really have time to be creative or work on new projects. But Vara is taking a lot of work off my shoulders. So that's how, like, Globetrotters in Action has happened. This podcast, I'm doing way better gi designs for the shop and for the camps, and I think I'm just able now to create even better experiences for people who go to the camps. And this is something I do. I spend every day, all day on thinking and planning on how to make these things better. Because again, the camps are just pretty much just my holiday that people crash. So I only design them primarily for my own sake. If I didn't go to the camps, I don't think I would be as passionate about making them good experiences as I am. So you can say that somehow now VAR took a lot of the administration works off my shoulders, so I can spend even more time on just sitting and planning my own dream holidays, which happens to be camps in one way or the other. So at least in the near future, I have some more ideas I wanna make happen. I think there's still room for more good projects that can benefit people through the Globetrotters network. And of course, if you have any good ideas for what direction Globetrotters can go, or projects we can do, or stuff we can support, always feel free to shoot me an email on mail@bjjglobetrotters.com. Next question was, will there ever be longer camps than a week, like 2 weeks, 10 days or something? I haven't planned any of that. I would love to do it, but we'll see. I think I always try to think out of the box with the camps and everything we do, and it's definitely not implausible that there will be something that's completely different from how you know the camps right now. I have some things on my idea whiteboard here in front of me and I know most of the ideas will probably never happen, and they're kind of overly ambitious, but I try to dream big and do my best to do something completely different, because at some point it's kind of sad, but when you do a lot of camps or a lot of fun things all the time, then you really raise the bar for what's interesting and fun and kind of what makes a good memory. And it's good and bad, because it really makes me push the experience for myself all the time. Like, what do I want to do with the camps? How do I make it the best possible experience for myself? And once you've done it enough times, you really, or even just a few times, you really have to come up with something new to make it bigger, better, more fun, more interesting. So I have some ideas, and the research project for 2019 is going to be absolutely crazy, but I have to. I can't just repeat what we did this year, what we're going to do this year, even though it's already incredibly ambitious. So that's it. Yeah, probably at some point. I can imagine there'll be a longer camp. I also have family obligations and stuff and other stuff to do. So, but we'll see. Maybe there'll be like a round the world camp or something. It might be a little bit expensive to set up, but who knows? Maybe we'll do a camp that travels around the world or something. I have some ideas here in front of me. I'm not going to mention them because most of them are not going to happen, but we'll see. So that was the 7th episode of the BJJ Globetrotters Pirate Radio Podcast. If you want to know anything else about the BJJ Globetrotters, just go to bjjglobetrotters.com, where you can find pretty much everything. If you want to listen to any of the other episodes of this podcast, you can go to bjjglobetrotters.com/podcast, or just look it up on iTunes. It's fairly easy to find. If you haven't yet joined our Facebook group called Members of BJJ Globetrotters, I think we're more than 13,000 people there at the moment, constantly growing, and it's pretty much a Facebook group just for people helping each other out with travel recommendations and finding places to stay and train and connect with other jiu-jitsu practitioners from from any corner of the world, really. So that's it. I'm going to wrap up this episode, and I will be back with episode 8. And it's going to be about working on a cruise ship in order to travel the world so that you can train jiu-jitsu everywhere. It's an interview I think turned out really well, and I'm excited to do that episode. So take care, and don't get any injuries until I see you next time, and have a wonderful day.